Hello, and welcome back to the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices. I'm Peter Houston, and this season we are bringing you the best sessions from the Definitive AI Forum for Media, Information and Events, which we held with Flashes and Flames in London at the end of last year. Each episode is accompanied by a write-up of the key takeaways, which you can find on our site, voices.media, or get delivered straight to your inbox every Tuesday by subscribing to the Publisher newsletter, which is also linked from voices.media. Before we get to this week's interview, I just wanted to let you know that from the end of February through March, we'll be running a series of AI-focused masterclasses online. These are the masterclasses we first hosted in person at our AI event in November. They're all focused on how to get the best from AI in your publishing business, from measuring ROI to optimising engagement and content discovery. They'll run every Wednesday from the end of February, and you can book now at voices.media/masterclasses using the discount code MV25 to save 25% on the $49.99 ticket price. Back to this week's episode, which features Toby Wiseman, MD for Content at Hearst UK, speaking with Flashes and Flames Colin Morrison about what AI means to the magazine publisher. Toby talked about Hearst's effort to get staff on the same page with AI, making them more comfortable with the technology through an AI amnesty, through regular training sessions, and by crafting an AI policy. He said AI should be invisible, and was clear that there was no place for publishing AI-generated content. He did, however, see a powerful role for AI in optimising content discovery and audience engagement, restoring the link between content and communities. Colin began the interview by asking Toby what AI means to Hearst.
So now we're talking to Toby Wiseman, who's head of content for Hearst magazines. In some ways, the archetypal kind of magazine publisher. Some of the world's best-known magazine brands are there, Good Housekeeping, Cosmopolitan and the like. So, Toby, how do you answer the question about what AI means to Hearst in the UK?
How to answer that question? Well, I think a year ago, I would say that you could ask 5 different people in Hearst on any given time what AI means to them or to the company. You'd probably get 5 different answers. So I think the last year has really been about trying to sort of galvanise what we as a company sort of how we view AI, where it fits in with our strategy, and to sort of make sure we try and get everyone onto the same page. And there's been a sort of few processes there. I think first and foremost we had an AI amnesty, so anyone could sort of come forward and say what they had been using, what they hadn't been using, without fear of any kind of retribution. We had a number of sort of drop-in clinics where people could come and ask questions. Air concerns, anxieties, basically just trying to sort of break the ice and make people feel comfortable talking about these things. We've developed an AI policy. We have AI tools, training sessions constantly. We have sessions where we're teaching people to build their own GPTs. The last year has very much been about sort of, I mean, we heard this word a lot today, democratization. I think making people sort of feel more comfortable with it. Because I think, again, there probably wasn't a day that goes past where you don't sort of, someone sends you something on WhatsApp with some kind of AI-generated piece of content and it sort of simultaneously excites you and scares you. So I think it's about sort of trying to sort of calm those waters. But then, crucially, we've been doing another piece of work about sort of demonstrating our values, setting out our guidelines for the next 5 years. And AI is very much sort of part of the invisible sort of bedrock and infrastructure of that, but absolutely nothing to do with in terms of what we mean, what our brands mean to people. And we are just basically very, very much concentrating on sort of connecting content with communities. And if AI helps us to do that, then more the better. But absolutely AI, we affirm that AI would have absolutely no place in the actual creation of content.
So that's essentially you defining the AI policy you have, that it isn't the most important thing, it's a facilitator, not an end game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be more than an enabler. I think that it's, you know, I come from an editorial background. It's very easy to talk about. I mean, of course, AI is a threat to magazine companies. I mean, it just stands to reason that if anyone can make anything, you know, the more people that can create content, the more it puts sort of a downward pressure on the value of that. But it forces us to ask the questions: what makes our editorial output more distinct? And it makes us sort of drive harder at sort of giving it that kind of distinction, innovating more. And yes, we should be using these things as tools, and not just in the creation of content, but distribution of that content, how we sort of personalise offerings. I mean, I know Sean was fairly down on the idea of personalisation, but if you think about magazines, they're fairly sort of monolithic kind of creations. If it was to sort of break down the sort of building blocks of the content we produce to cater them for individual interests, then I think that, again, it's working out how we can find better ways to connect our content with people.
So what would that mean in 2 or 3 years' time? What might AI enable you to do? What kind of differences would there be in a Hearst magazines with AI fully working? And
one of the things, again, that Sean was talking about actually chimes very closely with a project that we're currently working on. If you can imagine, we have huge archives of content across 17 brands for decades. And that's sort of sitting there. We tap into it as humans to better sort of recycle, repurpose. But the very idea that you can actually use AI as a kind of a librarian, as a curator who can sort of take the building blocks of those things and create new products. So everything has been human created. There has been human oversight. There will always be human oversight. But for us to be able to sort of tap into new trends or developments and be more reactive to sort of things that are going on in the world, to be able to use AI to sort of curate that content could be incredibly useful. I mean, I'm very insistent that, yes, of course, people talk about AI in terms of efficiencies, but we'd always be interested in efficiencies. I'm more interested in AI in terms of value creation rather than cost cutting per se.
is AI sort of anti-magazines in the way that the definition of a consumer magazine in some ways, and I think somebody once told me the word magazine is even something from Egypt that means warehouse or storehouse.
It comes from magazine, as in magasin, the
right,
French for shop.
Closer to home. I was never good at languages. But in a way, that does say something about what consumer magazines are. They tend to be a collection of things, don't they? It tends to be a compendium in some ways. Even if you don't make too strong a point of personalisation, and perhaps it'll work, it's almost the opposite, the future, isn't it?
I would argue that it's the opposite of that, in the sense that the Googleization of content, if you like, the absolute rush to put as much content online as possible for little value in some places. I mean, Google is the opposite of curation. The idea is if you create a magazine, an editor gives it to a customer, and we are, as humans, as creatives, deciding what we think that the members of our club would want to consume. The very nature of search, Google search, is people are looking for answers. So I think that if we can work out ways that we can sort of avoid that kind of Google mediation by using AI to connect directly to customers again, I think we restore that link between the content and the community, which is what magazines are all about in the first place.
Taking a point that I raised with Sean of Immediate, because you're both, as publishers, both have a kind of central business in food.
Yeah.
It's important. Does AI mean much to you in that area? Food feels like one of those sort of database.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been absolutely instrumental. And we've recently launched a Good Housekeeping sort of recipe app. We spent like 2 years trying to work out how we could go and retroactively tag all of the different kinds of recipe content we had, which in many cases was very rudimentary. I mean, just like a Word document attached to an InDesign file. But being able to sort of properly sort of go through that and tag everything and order it has been absolutely instrumental.
How big a database is that? I guess it's not like Alame's 420 million images or something, but is it millions of recipes?
It is millions, yes.
Right. And how long did it take, and what kind of expenditure to do that? Just very roughly. I mean,
well, I think the interesting thing is we shopped around a number of different vendors at the start who all gave us sort of prices of varying sort of ridiculousness. And then obviously being part of Hearst, a huge sort of worldwide company, are very keen on sort of building sort of proprietary tools that the whole world could use. So we get back internally again. So it was a kind of a flick-flacking between external vendors and internal sort of innovation. And in the end, we sort of went for a bit of both.
Is it quite simple and relatively cheap? That's what I'm taking. It's not.
No, it's not.
Right, okay, that's a good... So what do you think, it's a sort of debate you can have about how far a magazine type of business exists in the future, how different it will be. When you're thinking about in 4 or 5 years' time, what would Hearst magazines look like? How different might it be? And how different might I, as a consumer, see it?
Well, as I say, I mean, we've spent a lot of time this year sort of working on our sort of 5-year strategy. In fact, we produced a small booklet, the title of which was "This is not a magazine," which might give you an idea of sort of where I'm sort of going with that. The idea that a magazine, as this, let's say, monolithic entity, is perhaps something we're going to leave behind, but not actually abandoning the word magazine at all, focusing on that kind of store, cupboard, shop kind of analogy. Hearst's central ethos is to connect content with communities. We want to become the world's biggest membership company. Membership, customers, is at the heart of everything we do. And I do think that we can use AI in order to help sort of re-galvanize that connection, which I think has been lost as the relationship between content and people has been mediated via the internet. But I mean, the irony is that we have never been sort of more interconnected via platforms, and yet we've never been so dislocated. I think that we have lost that kind of integral kind of sort of club mentality that you would have with an old-fashioned magazine, if you like, or an old-fashioned magazine brand. So we're going to sort of restore those connections. Sean was talking lots about users and lots about content, and with all due, I mean, there are 2 words that I loathe. I mean, my job title is the MD of content, but I can't stand the word content. It's so soulless. Users, it feels like we're demeaning these people. I mean, they are our customers. Ultimately, they should be our members. And the irony is at the same time, we tend to anthropomorphize AI. So we talk about ChatGPT as hallucinating, and I think that's a really, really dangerous language to lose, because hallucination, or the ability to hallucinate, is a human quality, and it suggests that it's fallible, and we forgive that, whereas we shouldn't be thinking of that. It's software and hardware and machinery that malfunctions. So I think we do well to remind ourselves of that and see it as a tool, but as no substitute for human creativity.
And is it that AI, which commoditise, in a sense, AI and associated digital technologies have increasingly commoditised all kinds of content? And that means something to magazines, doesn't it? Am I wrong to characterise it as magazines tend to have a relatively small amount, each magazine, a relatively small amount of things that I only get in this magazine, as opposed to a lot of other things associated with it that I might also want, but are more readily available? Is that a wrong characterisation?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the key thing is the duty that's incumbent upon magazine publishers is to, we've got to meet people where they are. I don't mean just geographically, but where they are in their head. I mean, we've talked before where they are sort of politically, where they are. I mean, I think it's completely feasible that people will consume the same kind of content across 3 different platforms, depending on whether they're on the tube or at work or on the sofa on a Sunday. So I think it's about how we sort of repurpose, recreate, also be a truly multi-platform publisher across multiple platforms in acknowledging that different platforms engender different kinds of consumer behaviour and giving it to people where they want it, how they want it, and at the site
and in a sense, more services than products, in a way.
I do very much believe in services. I think that, again, I spent a long time sort of working for Men's Health magazine, whereas utility and service journalism was absolutely at the core of that brand. I think the same applies to a brand like Good Housekeeping, and it's no coincidence they're sort of 2 of the brands in the rudest health sort of within Hearst. I think that magazine brands do, if they are to survive, have to sort of think about that in terms of the utility they offer, because I think that's where value is created.
And because you're a successful editor over a longer period, what comes to my mind is what kind of policy issues does using AI raise for journalists? How do you... I mean, nakedly, AI sometimes gets things wrong. We've all got nonsense out of AI as well as interesting stuff. How do you manage journalists in the era of AI? Because it kind of isn't as defendable and as safe as search, is it?
No, I mean, I would totally agree. I mean, I think that AI, in particular, if we're just talking about ChatGPT, for instance, gets things wrong all the time. I mean, I felt that very keenly at the weekend where I was hosting a pub quiz, which I was running a bit late on coming up with the questions, and used ChatGPT, and it just made up the answers to a lot of them. So there's a lesson for us all. I think it's, as I say, it's about that kind of openness and transparency that we've been sort of trying to sort of put into the culture at Hearst, but starting with that amnesty, if you like, and then really ramming home the kind of the importance of that. I mean, the policy took a long, long time to craft, because at the start it was very legalese, if you like. Then it became very, very HR, and I think it had to come from a human, if you like. It had to come from with an editorial voice, so people realised that yes. I think that I mentioned to you, we were talking before. I think the New York Times got it absolutely right when they sent this missive out to the newsroom, probably this time last year, and pretty much the gist of the missive was, we may be suing OpenAI, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to be all over it. These are the tools that you can use. These are the ways in which we want you to use them, but absolutely never, ever at the expense of human oversight. And I think one of the things that actually sort of encourages me is that I think that we sort of tend to assume that younger generations are ready to sort of abandon all of these kind of values that we've held dear over many, many generations. But I think actually, in my experience, Gen Zers are far, far more suspicious and anti sort of unethical use of AI in content creation than other generations. I think that authenticity is almost the new scarcity, if you like, and I think that people are very, very intolerant of artifice. So any publisher sort of hoping to sort of cut corners rather than just cut costs by using AI to create the content instead of humans, I think will face a reckoning.
But very specifically, what do you say to journalists about AI services? How can they use them? How can't they use them? What are the constraints? What are the guidelines? Or is it up to them, really?
We're encouraging people to build their own. We have an enterprise version of ChatGPT at Hearst. We're encouraging people to build their own GPTs in there. So for someone working on the website of a brand that relies on a high amount of Google Discover traffic, then they may sort of build their own GPTs to help sort of create Google Discover headlines, or they may sort of build like subbing GPTs and things like that. I think it's to use it as like the keenest kind of editorial assistant around, and also perhaps use it as a sounding board. Most media organisations now are sort of are populated by less people than they were a while back. So I think it's being able to use AI as to replace the kind of the gophers in the room in that respect. But absolutely never, ever at the point of absolute creation. One of the questions of Chris's in the last panel was, how would customers sort of see the use of AI in the products that you produce? And I think it should be absolutely invisible. It should be infrastructural. It's there to sort of help with the facilitation of what we do, but absolutely should not be sort of worn on the sleeve or the lapel of what we do.
I think that's a good sentence to finish that interview with. We say thank you very much to Toby. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, and to Toby for joining us at the AI Forum. As always, if you want to read our Key Takeaways article or sign up to our newsletter, you can find both at voices.media. We've got more exciting events coming up this year, from the Monetising B2B Forum in May, which you can now book at flashesandflames.com, to our summer newsletter and podcast focused gathering probably in July, and of course a return to the AI Forum for next November. And remember to book your AI Masterclass tickets at voices.media/masterclasses. Esther will be back next week with an episode featuring a panel discussion on how AI is changing newsrooms, with insight from News UK, the FT and Bauer. Until then, goodbye.